Recently, I rewatched the 2017 Power Rangers reboot movie, and I have to admit, I still really like this movie. The characters are great, the acting is great, and the camera work is awesome. But I do have some notes, which is why I decided to do this series in which I fix these mistakes with my own ideas, because I'm pretty sure no one on YouTube has ever done anything like this before. Quick disclaimer, I am not a film studio. I have the benefit of kind of going, oh yeah, and this is how this will be, while not having to worry about budget, studio demands, or collaborating with the other people on a creative team. So yeah, now into the video. I'm gonna go through some very minor stuff before I get to the meat here. Firstly, design. I generally like the design of this movie. Everything in the Angel Grove scenes looks very normal, and so seeing the very alien-looking power coins, command center suits, and Zords is a nice juxtaposition to that. And I personally think they did a really good job with the power coins and the suits. I wish the suits were a little less generic looking, but they're overall pretty good. The command center looks great design-wise, though I think it would benefit with a little color because it kind of bleeds together when not watched on a giant movie screen. Plus, it's Power Rangers. Also, the Zords need a redesign. I get what they're going for, but these don't look good. Make the Zords actually combine together into a practical Megazord, instead of having them fuse together, well, because toys. And I wish they looked more like the dinosaurs they're supposed to be, instead of tanks. The pterodactyl could be a bird for all I could tell, the Tyrannosaurus looks like a velociraptor, and last I checked, mastodons don't have 8 legs. Also, why does Alpha have a beer belly? The rest of his design is fine, just fix that. Now, characters. I really like pretty much all the characters, but a few things here. 1. Add Bulk and Skull. Everyone loves them, just make them a little less slapsticky. There are bullies in this movie, just replace them with Bulk and Skull and make the scene a little more comedic. Okay, here's the big thing. This is not Rita Repulsa. She bears almost no resemblance to the character from the show. She has a staff similar to Rita's and makes references to Rita, but she is not Rita. In my version, she's an original character. Same thing with Goldar. This is only Goldar in that it's made of gold and has wings, that it doesn't use, by the way. So Goldar is going to be instead an ectomorphicon from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie. I'll explain the backstory for both of these in the meat of the video, the plot. The characters and execution of this movie are pretty great, but the plot could definitely use some work. The big problem with the plot and pacing of this movie is that the first 2 acts are almost entirely character moments, and the last act is almost entirely action. This makes the first 2 acts really good, and the last act feel like a drop in quality. So, in my version of the plot, there will be more action throughout the movie. Now, I should note that my version will be longer, which probably wouldn't happen realistically. Lionsgate would probably only want it to be 2 hours because kids would be watching. But this is a video about fixing the movie, so if making the movie longer fixes it, I'm gonna do that. So, the movie opens with about 10 minutes where we are pretty much just introducing each character, and I think showing a little more of Zack and Trini at the beginning would be nice. We don't see that scene at the beginning of Zordon and Rita, who, by the way, will be referred to as Persephone, though I'm not super attached to that name. Anyway, about 5 to 7 minutes in, we see Jason's dad fish Persephone's body out of the sea, and she wakes up. Then at about the 10-minute mark, we see her kill for the first time. This scene will probably be like the scene where she kills that homeless guy, except she's not searching for gold and she uses her power coin. Then we get a shot sweeping over the mountains and eventually land at the command center. We see the Morphin Grid awaken and activate both Alpha and Zordon. I don't see any reason Zordon can't be introduced here, so I'm going to do that. Plus, you can reference the classic scene from Day of the Dumpster. However, instead of Zordon and Alpha selecting 5 teenagers, the Morphin Grid itself will. Then we see a series of visions. Visions of a war millions of years ago, visions of the Power Rangers. We see visions of the mine, visions of the command center, visions of Persephone, and visions of the power coins. As these visions go along, we see the different Rangers waking up in the middle of the night. The Morphin Grid has selected them and given them dreams to lure them to the power coins. This gives them a little bit more of a reason why they're out the mines besides coincidence. I wouldn't say this was a problem in the original, but it supports it. Then they get the power coins the same way they did before, but the next day all of them get together at the school. In the original, it's just Jason, Billy, and Kimberly. But for the teamwork aspect of this movie, I think we should see Zach and Trini there too, especially since both of them had scenes realizing they have powers that were cut from the final film. It's said that they both also go to Angel Grove, just that Trini is barely noticed and that Zach rarely goes, so it's weird that we never see either of them there besides a couple of brief cutaways. We could even get the first hint at Zach's home life, with one of the kids going, "Zach, what are you doing here? You almost never come to school," and Zach responding with like, "I know, but this is kind of important." Anyway, they discover the command center. Zord and Alpha tell them that the Morphin Grid has been in existence since the beginning of time, but it was first tapped into millions of years ago to create the first team of Power Rangers. They were created to fight in a cosmic war. Persephone, the Green Ranger, turned to the side of evil. Now, millions of years later, she's returned. She jolted the Morphin Grid awake by using her power coin, which serves as her connection to it. The Morphin Grid has selected the teens as a new team of Power Rangers to fight her. So obviously the teens have a lot of questions. They ask them where they, Zordon and Alpha, fit into this. Zordon explains that he created the Power Rangers and led them as the Red Ranger. He died while connected to the Morphin Grid, so his consciousness was preserved within it, and the Morphin Grid has resurrected him in a way to mentor the new Rangers. Alpha explains that he is an AI training robot built by and connected to the Morphin Grid. The teens ask why Persephone needs to be stopped. Why is she a threat? What does she want? Zordon and Alpha say that they don't know, but that the Morphin Grid is attached to Persephone and can feel her evil intentions, and that the Morphin Grid can see all throughout time, including the future. It wouldn't have formed a new team of Rangers and summoned Zordon and Alpha if it didn't think there was a threat to be stopped. The Rangers, like in the show and movie, don't believe them and leave. Though, unlike in the original movie, while Jason trusts Zordon and tries to convince them to believe him, the other Rangers just leave. This gives Jason more of a growth to go through as a leader. Anyway, they leave the command center, but when they get to the surface, Persephone is waiting there for them. "So, you're the new Power Rangers?" "We aren't Power Rangers," Zach replies. "Give it up! I know you just left the command center. Your power coins, hand them over." Then Kimberly says, "You're making a mistake. We aren't the Power Rangers." "Alright. Then I guess we'll have to do this the hard way." Persephone summons the putties and sends them to attack. While the Rangers are able to land a few good punches because of their power coins, they aren't trained and are losing so bad that it doesn't seem like they have power coins at all. I guess you're right. You're not the Power Rangers. Kill them. Persephone leaves, thinking the Rangers were just some teenagers. The Rangers continue to fight and lose until Alpha shows up and beats up all the putties like a total badass. Now do you believe we're telling the truth? This obviously mirrors the Rangers fighting the putties in Day of the Dumpster, but they don't morph. So then we go back to the command center where Zordon asks the Rangers if Persephone mentioned anything about her plans. All they come up with is that she mentions something about getting their power coins. Zordon decides Persephone wants the coins to make herself powerful enough to rule the world or worse. Yeah, the Zeo Crystal thing is dumb and I'm taking it out. The teens accept that they are the Rangers and try to morph but fail. Zordon and Alpha say that they don't know why it's not working, that while they're connected to the Morphin Grid, they don't understand it. Alpha guesses that maybe they haven't earned the ability to fully connect to the Morphin Grid and morph yet, so they start training anyways. Cue the montage, Zords, and Breakfast Club scenes from the original. The 11th hour scene of Rita fighting the Rangers and killing Billy, I'm going to move to the middle of the movie and tweak it a little bit. Firstly, Persephone kidnaps Billy and sends a ransom note to the other Rangers. The Rangers meet, and at this point, Jason's leadership skills have developed to the point where he can calm everyone down and form a game plan before leading everyone into battle, though he's not a great strategist. They decide that they'll listen to her just long enough to find out what her plan is with Billy, and then they'll attack. The Rangers arrive to see Billy hung over the ocean. Persephone demands that the Rangers give up their power coins or she'll kill Billy. The Rangers refuse and start fighting her in the same sort of scene as in the original. But they fail like in the original and Persephone drops Billy into the ocean and leaves. Now, the whole morphing for the first time allows someone who died to come back to life thing is dumb. It doesn't make any sense, and it's just there so we can have unnecessary drama between Zordon and the Rangers, and so that they could get a few tears out of the audience when Billy died, and then reverse it. I'm taking that whole thing out. The Rangers work together to save Billy, which they succeed in doing, and in doing that, they access the morphing grid and morph for the first time. This is the first time they act as a team, and they earn access to the morphing grid. Then the whole team fights Persephone, and since it's essentially one experienced ranger versus 5 new rangers, it's pretty evenly matched, with the rangers just barely coming ahead when Jason is able to summon the power sword. Persephone retreats. The rangers get back to the command center, celebrating their accessing the morphing grid and beating Persephone. Zordon and Alpha tell them that Persephone is still out there and that they shouldn't be celebrating yet, but the rangers don't really listen. Then, Zordon says that he feels a disturbance in the morphing grid, that Persephone has found and activated an ectomorphicon. Alpha starts freaking out. The Rangers ask Zordon what an ectomorphicon is. Zordon says that when Persephone betrayed the Rangers and joined the other side of the cosmic war, they exploited her connection to the morphing grid by creating an army of pseudo-Zords called ectomorphicons. Zordon and Alpha had assumed that they were all destroyed in the war, but Persephone must have found the remains of one in good condition and is now in the process of activating it. I should note here that there would be scenes of her finding and activating the ectomorphicon earlier in the movie. I just didn't mention them for suspense. Once fully activated, the ectomorphicon in the hands of Persephone could cause unspeakable damage, and they only have about 36 hours until that happens. The Rangers ask what they can do. Zordon explains that each ranger has a weapon they can summon, like the power sword that Jason previously summoned. We see each ranger summon their weapon for the first time. Then Zordon says that all 5 weapons could combine together into a weapon that may be able to destroy Persephone, called the Power Blaster. But it requires the Rangers to work together as a team for them to be able to form the blaster and strategize correctly to defeat Persephone and stop the ectomorphicon. So then we see a little more training. Maybe they form it once right at the end, or maybe they come close to forming the power blaster but run out of time. They leave, with Zordon saying to them, "May the power protect you." Just as Persephone used her connection to the morphing grid to track down the command center, the Rangers use it to find her hideout where she's keeping the ectomorphicon. They engage with Persephone, and we actually see the Rangers morph like they did in the show. They summon their morphers, yell, "It's morphin' time," and call out their animals. Persephone also morphs. Persephone's staff is what's charging the ectomorphicon, feeding off the energy of her power coin wirelessly. So the Rangers' goal is to use the power blaster to take out the staff. Eventually, they strategize and are able to fire at the staff, but at the last second, Persephone jumps in front. She gets hit and flies backwards, knocking out the staff. The Rangers think they're victorious, but the ectomorphicon did fully charge and activates. Persephone, being injured, ends up fusing to the inside of the ectomorphicon in order to survive. The ectomorphicon starts moving toward Angel Grove. The Rangers summon the Zords and go to stop her. This scene is a little shorter because it was kind of dragged out in the original. No putties, and while the ectomorphicon is trashing the city, it seems it's actually just moving through Angel Grove to get somewhere else. That place turns out to be the Angel Grove power plant, which ideally we have already seen, so it's not coming out of nowhere. The Zord fight is essentially the Rangers trying to stop the ectomorphicon from getting there. They don't know why it needs to get there, but they know it can't be good. Then, while fighting, they ask Persephone why she needs to get there. All she says is that the ectomorphicon is still damaged, and that it needs more power for her to get to her leader. Keep in mind this is all happening at like 5 or 6 a.m., so it's still entirely dark out. Most of the light is coming from the buildings of Angel Grove, with everyone waking up to see this massive battle happening. Then Persephone, as a last-ditch effort, uses the ectomorphicon to throw the Zords one by one into the power plant, with the Zords maintaining serious damage and the entire town going dark. This is when we get the heartfelt moment of the Rangers truly becoming one and forming the Megazord pretty much right as the sun is rising. They defeat the ectomorphicon and throw Persephone into space. The movie ends in the command center, where Zordon commends the Rangers for forming the Megazord, something the original team never could. Then they tell Zordon about Persephone mentioning something about a leader, but Zordon just says hopefully that never happens and begins talking about them being Power Rangers. He says that they are free to go back to their normal lives, but that they must be on call in case something else rises up. That is, if they're up for it. Each Ranger then states why they will remain Rangers before they all put their hands together, yell, "Power Rangers!" and jump. I'm changing the mid-credit scene as well. Instead of hinting towards Tommy, we see Persephone's frozen body land on the moon. Then we see her frosted eyes open. We hear, escaping from her throat in a whisper, "Rita." Blackout. So I hope you like this. I tried to improve the plot as well as Jason's arc throughout the movie. Also, I had the team show their teamwork 3 times instead of 2, where each time they become more of a team and get rewarded as such. If you guys like this, I might do videos in the future pitching ideas for sequels to this version of the movie. But something you'll also notice is I mentioned very little about the cosmic war that the original Rangers were in. The reason for that is that before we get a sequel, we first must get a prequel.